He was not searching for answers when it happened. There was no meditation cushion, no deep breathing, no spiritual goal, just an ordinary evening after an ordinary day. He sat alone, staring at nothing in particular. His mind moved the way it always did, jumping from memory to worry, from plan to regret. The noise felt familiar, almost comforting. Then something shifted in the middle of a thought. He noticed it, not the thought itself, but the fact that it was happening. It was like stepping back half an inch inside his own mind. The thought kept going, but now there was space around it, as if it were being watched. That was when the strange question appeared. If I can see this thought, who is the one seeing it? The question did not feel intellectual. It felt personal, almost unsettling, like realizing someone had been standing quietly behind him his whole life. He tried to ignore it, but the feeling stayed. A quiet awareness beneath the noise, watching, without judgment. Over the next few days, this awareness returned again and again, while brushing his teeth, while speaking to a friend, while feeling annoyed in traffic. Each time, he noticed something new. His reactions were predictable. The same emotions appeared in the same situations, like a script playing on repeat. But now there was distance. He was no longer fully inside the script. He was watching it happen. One morning, he felt anger rise suddenly. Normally, it would take over his words and actions. This time, he saw it forming, a tightening in the chest, a fast story in the mind, and something unexpected happened. The anger slowed, not because he fought it, but because he saw it. That moment stayed with him. If watching anger changed it, what else could change just by being observed? The question grew heavier. He began to feel that most of his life had been lived on automatic, thoughts creating emotions, emotions driving actions, actions shaping outcomes, and all of it running without awareness. Late one night, the idea struck him with full force. What if the observer was not part of the chaos? What if it was something deeper, something untouched by fear, memory, and habit? The thought frightened him. If he was not his thoughts, then who had he been calling himself all these years? He noticed how often his mind spoke in his name. I am tired. I am not good enough. I am afraid. But now those sentences felt different, like stories told by a voice he could hear, not truths he had to obey. As this realization deepened, the world around him seemed sharper, sounds clearer, moments slower. Life felt less rushed, yet the mystery grew. If simply noticing could change his inner world, what might it be doing to the world outside him? He sensed that this was not just about self-awareness. It felt like the edge of something larger, a doorway he had never seen before. And standing quietly at that doorway was the same presence he had just discovered, watching, waiting, as if it had always been there. And he was only now beginning to look back. The man did not talk about what he was experiencing. He felt it was too fragile, too strange. Instead, he searched quietly, not for answers, but for signs that others had seen this before. What he found surprised him. In old books and late-night articles, scientists described something unsettling. They had discovered that reality itself behaves differently when observed, not in poetry, not in metaphor, but in experiments. Particles of light acted like waves when no one watched them. But the moment they were measured, they changed behavior, as if they noticed the attention. This idea disturbed him. Observation was not passive, it was active. It shaped outcomes. He read about laboratories where the smallest pieces of reality refused to settle into a single form until someone looked. Only then did they choose. The man paused often while reading, feeling a strange echo inside himself. Was this what had been happening in his own mind? He had not forced change. He had not controlled his thoughts. He had simply observed, and yet something shifted. Science had a name for this, the observer effect. It suggested something radical, that the act of watching was never neutral. That awareness itself carried influence. The man felt a quiet tension building. If observation could change particles, could it also change patterns of thought, habits, identity? He began to see his mind as a kind of experiment, not something to fix, but something to watch carefully. As days passed, he noticed how often his attention drifted, lost in memory, pulled into imagined futures, rarely present. And when he was not present, life felt heavy, fast, unclear. But when he observed, truly observed, time slowed, choices felt lighter, moments gained depth. One afternoon, he tested it. He watched his fear without naming it, without explaining it, without pushing it away. The fear did not disappear, but it softened, like a sound losing volume when no one reacts to it. This raised a new question. If awareness changes what is observed, then most people are living without realizing what they are changing. He saw how often he had tried to improve himself by force, pushing, judging, resisting, all of it exhausting. Yet simple observation required no effort, no struggle, just presence. The idea unsettled him again. What if transformation had never been about becoming someone new, but about seeing clearly what already was? Science no longer felt distant or cold. It felt intimate, personal. The same universe that responded to measurement in a lab seemed to respond to awareness inside him. The boundary between inner life and outer reality began to blur, as if both followed the same hidden rule. What is observed changes. That night, as he lay awake, another thought surfaced. If observation shapes reality, then unconscious observation shapes it blindly, and conscious observation might shape it wisely. This realization carried weight, because it meant that every moment of attention mattered. Every thought noticed, every reaction seen. The man sensed he had stepped into something irreversible. Once you notice the observer, you cannot unsee it. And if awareness truly changes outcomes, then learning how to observe may be the most important skill a human can develop. The story was no longer just about him. It was about everyone watching, or not watching, and shaping their lives without knowing how. The man stopped trying to change himself, not because he gave up, but because something more powerful had taken its place. Instead of fixing, he watched. Instead of correcting, he noticed. Each day became an experiment. He observed how he spoke to people, how quickly he defended himself, how often his mind rushed ahead of the moment. At first, it felt uncomfortable, like standing under a bright light with nowhere to hide. Old habits did not like being seen. He noticed how often his thoughts tried to pull him back into stories. Stories about the past, stories about what might go wrong, stories about who he believed he was. But now, those stories felt thinner, less solid, like mist that faded when the sun rose. One morning, he caught himself reaching for his phone without thinking. The movement paused halfway, not because he forced it to stop, but because he saw it happening. That pause felt important. Inside it was choice. He began to understand something subtle. Awareness created space, and in that space, new responses appeared. He did not become calmer overnight. He still felt fear, still felt doubt, still felt desire, but these experiences no longer owned him. They passed through awareness. Instead of dragging him with them, he noticed how emotions changed when watched closely. Sadness became a sensation, not a story. Fear became movement in the body, not a warning about the future. The more clearly he observed, the less personal everything felt. This did not make life empty. It made it lighter. Without constant inner resistance, energy returned. Moments felt fuller. Conversations felt more real. People around him noticed something different. He listened more, reacted less, paused before speaking. Yet he never told them what was happening inside. This change did not need explanation. As weeks passed, a deeper insight formed. Control had never truly worked. The harder he tried to shape himself, the more tension he created. Awareness worked differently. It did not push, it revealed, and what was revealed often dissolved on its own. He realized that much of his suffering had come from being unconscious, not aware of the patterns guiding his life, not aware of the voice in his head pretending to be him. Now that voice had competition, a quieter presence, steady, patient, always watching. This presence did not judge failure or celebrate success. It simply noticed, and in that noticing, life rearranged itself. Choices felt clearer. Habits shifted without force. Old reactions lost their grip. The man sensed that awareness was not just a tool, it was a principle, a law that operated whether he believed in it or not. Most people lived inside their thoughts, believing every word, reacting to every impulse. He had lived there too, until observation pulled him out. Now he stood at a distance, close enough to feel, far enough to see, and a new question began to rise. If awareness can observe thoughts, emotions, and behavior, then what exactly is this awareness made of? The answer felt close, too close to see clearly, and he sensed that to understand it, he would have to look beyond the mind itself. The question would not leave him. If thoughts could be observed, then the observer could not be the thoughts. This idea followed him everywhere, in silence, in conversation, in moments when the mind rested between one thought and the next. He began to look more closely, not at what he was thinking, but at what remained when thinking slowed. In those brief pauses, something was still there, calm, unmoving. It did not speak, it did not explain, it simply was. At first, he almost missed it. The mind was loud and demanding, always offering opinions and stories, but the observer did none of that. It did not rush, it did not fear, it did not need to become anything. This realization felt strange and intimate, like discovering a quiet room inside a house he had lived in his entire life. Without ever opening the door, he noticed that this presence was the same during every emotion. It was there in joy, there in sadness, there in confusion. The emotions changed. The observer did not. This unsettled him. If something in him never changed, then it could not be defined by success or failure, by past or future. Philosophers had asked this question for centuries. Who is the self? Is it the body, the mind, or the awareness, watching both? The man felt he was no longer asking this as an idea. He was experiencing it directly. He saw how the mind tried to claim ownership, saying, "This is me, this thought is me, this feeling is me." But awareness watched even that claim. For the first time, he questioned a belief he had never examined, that he was the voice in his head. If he could hear that voice, then it could not be who he truly was. This insight created both freedom and fear. Freedom, because he no longer felt trapped by his thoughts. Fear, because the familiar sense of identity began to loosen, without the usual labels, without the old stories. Who was he? He noticed that awareness did not need an answer. It was complete. Without definition, this was not an escape from life. He still had responsibilities, still felt emotions, still made choices. But now everything passed through a deeper space, a space that did not cling, did not resist. He realized that this observer had been present during his entire life, watching childhood memories form, watching fears appear, watching dreams rise and fall. It had never interfered, never argued, never left. The mind had taken center stage for years, but awareness had always been the silent witness. This discovery changed how he saw others. Everyone seemed to be living inside their thoughts, unaware of the quiet presence watching within them. He wondered what would happen if more people noticed this, if they realized they were not there. Anger, not their anxiety, not their past. The question carried weight, because if awareness is who we are beneath the mind, then transformation is not about building a better self, but about recognizing what has always been there. As this understanding settled, he felt closer to something timeless, something shared, and he sensed that the observer he had found inside himself was not separate, but connected to something far larger than one human life. At first, the changes were subtle, so subtle he almost dismissed them. Conversations felt different. People seemed to listen more closely. Conflicts lost their sharp edge before becoming arguments. He noticed that when he stayed aware, fully present, situations unfolded with less resistance. When he reacted without awareness, life felt tight again, rushed, heavy. This pattern appeared again and again, as if reality itself responded to the quality of his attention. He began to see how often problems grew from unconscious reactions, a careless word, an automatic defense, a fear-based decision. But when those reactions were observed before acting, they softened or did not happen at all. This did not make life perfect. Challenges still came. Uncertainty still appeared, but something fundamental had shifted. He no longer felt pushed around by events. He felt in relationship with them. The world felt less like something happening to him, and more like something responding to him. He remembered what he had learned about science, that particles behave differently when observed, that outcomes depend on how measurement occurs. Now this idea no longer felt abstract. It felt lived. When he brought clear awareness into a moment, options appeared where none existed before. When he remained unconscious, old patterns repeated themselves. The same life, two very different experiences. He began to sense a deeper rule at work. Reality reflects awareness, not beliefs, not wishes, but attention itself. When his mind was scattered, life felt scattered. When his awareness was steady, life felt ordered. This realization humbled him. It meant he was always participating in what he experienced. Even when he believed he was a victim of circumstance, he saw how often people tried to change the world without changing awareness, fighting symptoms instead of seeing causes, pushing harder instead of noticing more. He had lived that way too, believing effort was the answer. Now, he saw that effort without awareness only created more noise. Awareness did not control reality, it aligned with it. He noticed how moments slowed when fully observed. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer, even ordinary tasks felt meaningful. Life no longer felt like something to escape from. It felt like something to enter fully. This brought a surprising sense of responsibility. If awareness shapes experience, then every moment of attention mattered, not in a heavy way, but in a quiet, honest way. He understood that unconscious living was not wrong. It was simply blind, and most of the world was living that way, reacting, chasing, resisting. He wondered how different society might be if people learned to observe first. Before judging, before acting, before believing every thought. The idea felt both hopeful and overwhelming. He realized that transformation was not about escaping reality, it was about meeting it with awareness. And the more clearly he met life, the more life seemed to meet him back. This raised one final, unsettling insight. If awareness changes inner life and shapes outer experience, then every human being is shaping their reality all the time, whether they know it or not. The difference is simple. Some are watching, and some are not, and that difference changes everything. The man understood something now that he could not forget. There was no final destination, no moment where awareness was complete forever. There was only this moment, and the next one. Each moment carried a quiet choice, to be lost inside thought, or to notice the one who was aware of the thought. Most of his life had been lived without seeing this choice. Days passed in habit, reactions followed reactions, and life felt like something that happened to him. Now he saw the truth clearly. Awareness was always available, waiting beneath the noise. It did not demand effort. It did not require belief. It only asked to be noticed. He realized that every human being lives under the same condition. Everyone is observing something, either unconsciously or with awareness. Unconscious observation repeats the past. The same fears, the same patterns, the same struggles. Conscious observation opens space. Space for choice, space for change, space for something new. The man saw that transformation was not rare or mystical. It was ordinary, quiet, happening, in unnoticed moments, in the pause before reacting, in the breath before speaking, in the awareness of a thought before believing it. He no longer searched for meaning outside himself. Meaning appeared naturally when he was present. He felt connected to something shared, a field of awareness moving through every person, looking out through different eyes. This did not make him special, it made him human. He understood now why the observer had felt familiar. It was not something new. It was what had always been there, the part of him that had watched his entire life unfold, without judgment, without fear, and he sensed that this was not just his discovery, it was an invitation quietly offered to everyone, in every moment, to notice what is already noticing. The world did not need to change first. Beliefs did not need to disappear. Thoughts did not need to stop. All that was required was awareness. As the man moved through his life, he carried this understanding lightly, not as a rule, but as a reminder that behind every thought, every emotion, every story, there is something watching, and the moment you notice it, life begins to change. Not because reality becomes different, but because you finally see how deeply you are part of it. The story ends here, but the choice does not. It is happening right now, as these words are heard, as thoughts appear, as attention moves. The same quiet question waits. Who is watching, and what might change? The moment you notice that you are,